All right, so my name is Chris Kovach. I am the local consultant here in Northeastern Florida and Southern Georgia. What we're going to do today, since I can't actually have the devices in front of you, I am going to show you the devices on our website. I'm going to pull up some of the software options that we have, and then I have a couple websites and a couple spreadsheets I'm going to show you to talk specifically about some different mounting solutions and options that you might run into with anyone that needs to affix an AAC device to a wheelchair. So with Tobii Dynavox, we have quite a few different speech devices available. One of the most popular is going to be our I-Series device. So this is the device, as Eric was just saying, someone with ALS or someone with a degenerative disease or someone that has the inability to physically touch the screen or to use one of the alternative access methods that would be considered less costly to an insurance company, that being touching the device, switch scanning, head tracking. This device is capable of doing all of those things, but also up to and including the actual tracking of the eyes to allow them to navigate the speech software as well as navigate the Windows environment to do things like getting online, doing their email, getting out to Netflix. Anything we can do with a mouse and a keyboard, they have the opportunity to do with just their eyes. Looking at these devices, let me see if I can get to a little bit of a better picture here for you guys. All right, so hopefully that is big enough for you guys to see. I'm looking at the device here on the left-hand side, the I-Series. So these devices are a 13 and a 16-inch screen. There are two different sizes. Hardware-wise, technology-wise, everything is the exact same. It's just a physical screen size and a little bit of the weight that changes between the two devices. When you are looking at these devices, this bar down here at the bottom, this black bar, is actually where the eye tracker is located. So Eric said earlier that there were lasers that came out and essentially hit you in the face to pick up where your eyes are. I don't like to call them lasers. They're sub-infrared lights. So they're not actually going to cause any damage or do anything to the eyes. But what's really happening is those lights are bouncing off of the eye and it's causing a reflection on the eye. And then also in that black bar at the bottom, there are cameras. And the cameras are picking up that reflection, and then the computer does all of its algorithms to kind of map out where is that eye looking, where is that light reflecting on the screen, where is it in relationship to the pupil. All of those things ultimately come together to allow us to gain accuracy while that person is navigating on the screen, so that we can track their eyes specifically and allow them to hit smaller and smaller topics or smaller and smaller items on the screen as we work through things. Some of the tools on the new I-Series device, these buttons down here on both sides. In the past, these buttons used to actually be on the physical sides of the devices. They were not accessible to someone who was using eye tracking as their access method. This newer device has now actually made these buttons touch activated as well as eye gaze enabled. So if I were to look at one of these buttons over here, this one is particularly the volume up button. If I were to look at that button, it would highlight in white and actually flash whenever I clicked it, thus turning up my volume by 10% of the time. This one would turn the volume down. And then these two over here can be programmed to be individual functions. In most cases, that's take me back to my home page and maybe pause my eye tracker. So that really gives more independence and more control to the person who is using the device, and less dependence is needed to ask the caregiver or ask the loved one to, hey, can you turn up the volume? Or, you know, we're in a loud environment and you couldn't hear me. So rather than having to step away from my keyboard or step away from my communication board, go into the settings and turn the volume up on my screen, I can simply look down at the corner and turn my volume up 10% of the time or turn it down 10% of the time. I'm going to pause for a second and apologize. I'm sure you guys can hear everything in the background right now. I do have my daughter in the background slamming toys on and off the ground. So if you're wondering what's happening in the background, that's just my life right now. So I apologize in advance. Some other nice things about the new I-Series device, one in particular that people really, really like, is this screen that we've now put on the back of the device. So this screen is our partner assisted screen that the user can control whether or not they want anything to be, if they want anything to be shown on the screen, or if they want it to show as they type a message or once they speak a message. So that user can type whatever they want on the screen, hit the speak button, and it'll present to you as the communication partner in a visual way as well. So this is really helpful whenever we have a couple scenarios. We want to facilitate better face-to-face communication. We don't want necessarily you looking over somebody's shoulder as they type. It's extremely frustrating and annoying for a lot of the users. They don't want someone looking over their shoulder, guessing at what they're trying to say. This gives you as the communication partner an understanding of the fact that they are typing something, to be patient and to let them finish that message. In addition, even if they typo something or their spelling maybe isn't 100% correct, you can read what they're saying as well, and you can put those things together to help more easily communicate, whereas you might not have understood the auditory that came out of the device if it was misspelled, but you can see in context what they were talking about, and it makes more sense whenever you're reading it as well as hearing it. The other time people tend to use this a lot is when they don't want voice output at all. So if they are at the bank, if they're in church, if they're at their grandkids' recital or some show at school, they may not want the device to speak loudly. Here they can just type what they want to say, and the other person can read it on the back of the screen. Other things with this, yes.
Oh, sorry to interrupt. This is a great option. He had mentioned that a lot of times people don't want you standing over them. As PTs, we're always trying to position the patient so they can get that eye gaze access. And what I found is that sometimes it tracks to my gaze instead of theirs. So I actually love this option because there's nothing more frustrating than having your PT actually use the device.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. So for the most part, the new eye trackers won't pick up other people's eyes unless you are close to that person's face, which does happen. So we are working with, with parents and with therapists and caregivers that they might get right down on that child's level, or they might get right down next to that user. And when their faces are side by side, those cameras and those sensors are just looking for eyes. They don't know, when there's two people looking at the device versus one, they just see the eyes and the reflection off of those eyes. So it might cause some inconsistencies as it's trying to bounce back and forth between the users. So just like you were saying, Janice, that's probably what was happening when it was picking up your eyes. Let's see here. So some of the other devices, that is the eye tracker. I'm going to show you guys probably the most popular tablet device that we have. It's going to be the i110. So this device here is the screen size of your standard iPad. But what is really different about this device is the quality of its speakers, the quality of its screen, its case, and the fact that it comes with all of our speech softwares included. For a lot of the patients that get this device, a lot of them are on the autism spectrum. So we have potential for behavioral issues, or even if that child doesn't have a behavioral issue, they might be going to school where there are other children that have behavioral issues, or they might bump a device off of a table or knock a device off of a doorway as they're carrying it from classroom to classroom. This device is far more durable than any off-the-shelf tablet. It's built with Gorilla Glass. It's a magnesium frame. It's drop tested. It resists water and dust and sand and everything from coming into the system. And we did all that because we want this device to be able to go anywhere with that patient. This isn't something that we only want to be used at home or at school or in therapy. This is their voice, or a way to augment their voice if they have some verbal communication, and we want them to have access to that no matter where they are. So within some of these devices, we do have quite a few other devices. I'm not going to dig in too deeply because, Todd, remind me, I think we wanted to be done around 10:30. Is that correct? Yeah, okay. So I'm going to keep things moving. I'm not going to jump into getting into specifics about all the different devices. I will just tell you the i110 is hands down the most popular tablet that we have, and the i13 and the i16 are the most popular eye tracking devices. We do have some other devices, but yeah, go ahead, Eric.
This is one of the smaller devices that Tobii Dynavox offers that also is available, that can do switch access as well. So yes. If you think about my my talk where I showed you the two switches, it has the ability to do dual switch or single switch. It will scan on its own, and the user would use a switch to activate the vocabulary.
Correct. Yep, this device, the i110 will do everything except eye tracking. So stepping away from some of the physical devices, I want to briefly show you guys some of the software. So we have three main types of software right now. The first is what we call Snapscene. And what Snapscene is designed to do is allow for in-the-moment communication. So whether this is a child or whether it's an adult, you can quickly take a picture of what that person sees in their environment and create a scene or create hotspots on that page for them to communicate with you. So in this particular example, someone was going camping. All right, I currently have no hotspots on this page. What I can do is quickly jump into my settings, and I'm gonna click my hotspot button up in the top, and I'm gonna use my finger on a device, and I'm just gonna circle whatever I want to be that hotspot for that patient. And I'm going to add a label. In this case, it might be tent. And then on this particular software, you're going to record your voice, or the parent's going to record their voice. And they're going to say, I'd like to go to sleep, or let's go to the tent. And then whenever you give that back to the patient, all they have to do is click that particular section. It's going to play that recording for them. They're going to see that word, and they're going to be able to quickly relate what they see in their actual surroundings to the picture on the screen. So they need a little bit less understanding of how to transition into maybe line drawings or pictures, and they have an easier way to relate to what's concrete in their environment. Eric, anything you want to jump in and say about any of that?
Yeah, so that type of voice output when we record it is called digitized voice. So with part of this is interesting because it's a high-tech device, but the voice option is more of in line of what I considered the mid-tech, like your Go Talk. So recording the voice. So you have limited, I don't want to say limited in a negative way. I mean, you're just kind of confined to what you can record versus a computer just generating novel utterances.
Correct. Yep. All right. Any questions about this particular software before I jump into one of the other ones? No. All right. So if we're working up in complexity, the next software, and I'm going to spend a little bit more time in this software because we have multiple different layouts and pages. This is called SnapCore First. And SnapCore First initially came out and was designed for our younger children, specifically the autism spectrum, and those that are learning how to construct sentences, to work on sentence structure, grammar, and kind of building those tools in that language and literacy development stage. So most adults are probably not going to use this particular layout. If they're literate, they're not going to want to see "I want more." That's more along the lines of a child who's putting those sentences together, where they can start to use or transition from something like a textbook or a lower tech device like Eric described to more of a high-tech speech output device. So in this particular software or this particular page, they can start to put their sentences together, navigate to a list that's already pre-populated or something that the family or the speech therapist may have built in, right into something that they might be hungry for. I want more pizza. And they can continue to grow the complexity and the structure of those interactions through the core board. Now, we also wanted to combine this with much faster, rapid communication, which is what we call our quick fires and our topics. So quick fires are going to allow the patient to quickly come over here and say, maybe in their personal needs, I'm thirsty or I'm hungry. And that's a great way to get someone's attention, to let them know that, hey, I need something. And then the caregiver or the therapist might ask them to then come back and say, okay, now tell me, what would you like to do? What are you hungry for? And we're starting to combine all of these tools to help build that communication structure. Topics are going to be questions, statements, phrases, all about that specific item. So that topic. In this case, it's all going to be about arguing. Now, we've done a good job of categorizing and color coding everything within the system that we've created. So all of our stuff is going to be blue if it's a question, orange if it's a general statement, green if it's a positive remark, and red if it's a negative. So this gives the opportunity for the user to ask questions, to make positive remarks, negative remarks, and statements about a specific topic or a specific thing that you might be working on, rather than having to navigate back and forth between a lot of different pages to get to the language that they may need. There are keyboards built into all of the software that we have, from Snap Core First and Communicator, the software we'll talk about in a minute. But what you'll notice if you are ever using Snap Core First and setting up a page is that the keyboard automatically matches your overall grid size. So if I were to go into my settings and change my grid size, I can change that grid size from 1 button anywhere up to 80 buttons on the page. And that keyboard is going to match however many buttons I have. And the reason that we do that is access, because not all patients are going to be able to locate and select a full keyboard layout, 20, 30, 40, 50 buttons on a page, depending on the different predictive texts and numbers and tools that are on that page. And if you guys, as the speech therapist team with the PT team, have decided that this patient, I think I changed it to a 6x6 layout, if that's the best layout for them, then what we've done is we've decided to match that 6x6 layout in our keyboard as well. Because if you're using something like a key guard that is going to be a piece of plastic that lays on top of the screen, it's going to lay over top of all of the gray area that you see, and it's going to allow them to better isolate the individual buttons. We want to make sure that they still have access to that keyboard, just like every other user. We wouldn't want them to have a 6x6 layout here, but then have a full QWERTY keyboard here, and that key guard doesn't align properly, or then would cause them more issue and more frustration while trying to access. That make sense? Okay. All right. The last couple things in Snap Core First is the dashboard. So on some of those touch devices, and if someone is not using eye gaze, there are patients that don't have the ability to physically turn the volume up or down on a device. They don't have the finger strength or the finger dexterity to hit some of those volume or power buttons. So we give them, within the software, the ability to turn the volume up or down, launch different applications, kind of find out what time it is, what today is, even as much as linking into their Google Home speaker or their Alexa speaker. So home automation is becoming more and more popular, and we can now program the devices with the quality of the speakers and the voices. They can simply come in and say, Alexa, play the Beatles, and Alexa will pick up and allow them to communicate just as anyone else in their household would. What's really nice about using tools like Alexa and smart home automation is more and more things are now compatible. So there are families that are, utilizing the plugs, and they can plug fans and switches and air conditioners and lights into the wall and program a button for their loved one to say, Alexa, turn on the fan. Alexa, turn off the fan. Turn on the lights. And now they have control of their environment. And that is a huge deal for not only children, but for adults that want to feel more, have more independence or gain back some of that independence that they lost, whether it's by the disease or by the accident, and allowing them to be less reliant on others in their environment. So that's a little bit about the Core First layout. I'm going to switch up and show you guys 2 of the other page sets that we have in this software, because I know not everybody is going to be working with pediatrics. One of the great things about Snap Core First is when you go through the initial getting started section, if you click on Show More, you'll find out that you have quite a few different options here, including a Core First bilingual page that'll allow you to switch between English and Spanish, as well as switch the voice so that it actually speaks appropriately. We can switch into UK, French, Canadian, bilingual English, Spanish, or English, French, a dedicated scanning page where the scanning features are going to be more laid out. The categories are going to be more frequency of use. Then we get into aphasia and the text-based page set. So the aphasia page set, if we launch this one, get started here. We've modified a few things in the aphasia page set to allow us only a few options. So you'll notice as we're looking at these buttons, we're making them larger on the screen. We're providing not down to 1 button, not up to 80, but more of what did we see, what data are we collecting from our users to say these are the most popular pages that in sizes that people need. So when we launch out to an aphasia-based page set, you'll notice that it starts directly on their word list. What can we communicate about? What are the things that are most important to us? And this is all going to be laid out in more of a frequency of use design. So we might be talking about names of friends and family members. We might be talking about things that they want to drink or what's happening today in the weather. And they can click out or into those sections and see that we can talk about what's going on, talk about natural disasters. We have a lot of room for them to add in things that are specific to what they want to talk about or what they need in their everyday communication. We still have quick fires, and we are still using pictures because, and Eric, you can jump in on this as well. A lot of the patients that I work with, they really, really benefit from the use of seeing the word as well as a picture to help with some of that word finding activity. Eric, if you want to jump in on that for more of a speech side.
Yeah, so that's more of what we would call a multimodal presentation. So in some cases with CVA, patients do lose literacy skills or they have impaired literacy skills. So the pictures are good supports to kind of help them make an accurate decision on what words and what phrases to use.
Thank you. As well as some of the tools Eric brought up before, some of the low-tech tools, we've also built right into the speech software. So now rather than having to carry a whiteboard or a boogie board or pen and paper, they can simply use their finger or a stylus and right within the whiteboard page on their speech software, have the ability to communicate or write something if they don't want to type it out via text or find the word and speak it out loud. We also have our visual scenes and our grid topics. So this is going to allow, again, the activities, or the topics, where we can jump into, things like meals and talk specifically about different meals, what we might ask questions about, what we might answer, as well as scripting tools. So when we're working on that communication, that back and forth, that social interaction, they have something here to work from, to practice turn taking and things that might be appropriate during that conversation. And with the dashboard, still very much the same. They still have Alexa and volume and things along those lines, but we've also added in a calendar where we can see if they want to program in their daily activities or their weekly schedule. This is very, very important for a lot of my CVA patients. They want to know who's coming on what day, what time are they coming, when do I have therapy. Eric, looks like you're going to say something.
Yes. We have a question, but
Yes.
that I think is a good question. It's from Parker Craig. Can you use eye gaze for the whiteboard?
That is a really good question. I do not believe that you can currently, because most of the time with an aphasic patient, they don't need eye gaze as their access method. So this page was really designed for someone who is going to be using primarily some form of touch or stylus access. And let me see here, since I know we're running close on time. One of the last pages in this particular software is a text page. Let me see if I already have one here. There we go. All right, so a text-based page set might be used for someone who's completely literate. They know what they want to say. They don't need pictures. They want to just have an easy, quick way of communicating. So you'll notice that this is a lot more of an adult feel. The color scheme is much more neutral. It's all text. The buttons are larger. They can actually start to program their own buttons right here. So if they were keyboarding something, they could say, hello, navigate to wherever they wanted to save that particular button, click copy to button, choose where they want it to go, and now they've just programmed their own language structure. So they can really have as much independence as they want across any of those phrases. In this particular layout, you'll see that we got rid of all of the pediatric style, or all the pediatric phrases and topics. These are going to be things that are far more adult themed: money and banking, managing service providers, politics and advocacy, things that are going to be more relevant to what they want to communicate about and making them feel like they're not using a pediatric software. They are using a software that is designed for an adult, but is designed to be easy to use.
Chris, I have a question.
Yes.
I have a question, and then somebody has a question.
Okay.
So, the question is, can you use eye gaze with this one?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And then, because I'm thinking of my ALS guys, so this
Yep.
one looks like it would be a great page set. Then I wanted to let's go to the question in the chat. The Haley Dickman says, would this text layout be useful for someone with broca's aphasia? Maybe. My answer for this would be maybe. Because remember what I said about folks who have strokes, particularly with broca's, their language is impaired, their expressive language is impaired. However, in my experience, and anybody can chime in on this, in my experience, literacy tends to also be impaired quite a bit. So I think a CVA person would benefit more from a multimodal presentation, picture with word.
Okay. Awesome. So what we're going to do now is I'm not going to dig in very deep into the communicator software because I only have a couple minutes, and I think that Todd, do I need to be done at 10:30? Sorry, go ahead and unmute.
My fault. Yeah, you can you can keep going if there's something you want to show them real quick, for sure.
Okay. All right. So the last couple things I want to show you guys, I want to talk about positioning with an eye tracker, and then I want to talk about what you're looking at a wheelchair whenever you're working with a patient, and what information I'm going to need as a rep who's going to be trying to mount a speech device. So what I want to do here is I'm going to stop sharing this screen, and I'm actually going to try and share on one of my eye tracking devices. So hopefully this comes in clearly. All right, so you guys can see that, correct? All right, good. So what I'm doing is I'm actually using one of my iSeries devices right now. And if I turn on my settings, what you guys can see is in the right-hand side, that black box, right? This is gonna be absolutely critical for you guys to understand, for parents and caregivers alike. When we're using eye tracking, what we need to do is make sure that the device is positioned appropriately. And the best way to do that is to utilize this tool where you can see the positioning of the eyes. So meaning that those sensors are bouncing that light off of my eyes and that the cameras are picking it up. As you can see, I can move my head side to side, I can wink, I can look away from the device and come back, and it's going to pick up my eyes. What we're looking for here is both eyes in the center of the black box. And I gotta quit looking at that. And then the colorful bar on the side, you'll notice that there is a white triangle. And if you are too close or too far from the device, it's going to start to fall and tell you essentially that you need to reposition that user. So once the device is in the proper position, we can actually go through and calibrate. And when we do a calibration, what we're doing is we're allowing the computer, I'm going to do one live for you guys here. We're allowing the computer to capture data off of my eyes. Again, where that light is reflecting, how it's reflecting in each of the different locations on the screen. So if I'm working with someone like an ALS patient, I'm going to do something that's pretty in-depth, like what I'm doing right now, which is a 9-point calibration. So this is a lot of data. It's kind of not difficult to do, but if I was working with a younger patient, this is a lot to ask of them. So I'm not going to ask them to do something that's quite that as in-depth. I might only ask them to do 1 point in the center of the screen and allow them to just jump in and start utilizing games or playing things. So right now you can kind of see that red circle that's popping up on the screen. That's me. Those are my eyes. So I'm now calibrated. I'm controlling the computer. I'm going to jump out to a game real quick and just show you kind of how accurate this can be before I jump into the actual speech software and show you how that works. So when I'm working with anyone, really, I like to make it a positive interaction the best that I can. And doing so through games is a great way to do that. It allows them to kind of understand what it's going to feel like to control that environment with their eyes. So here I'm playing a game like Fruit Ninja. You can see I'm the blue kind of. And with my eyes, I can now chop up some fruit. And for the first time in maybe someone's life or in a very long time, they have control of that environment. They're playing a game that another member of their family could also play. or they might be able to get back out online and do more social media and interaction with family and friends that they might not have had access to without eye tracking. So very quickly, that game is now over. I'm going to exit out of here and jump into the speech software just to show you what it looks like. And I apologize for going so fast here, guys. Normally I would take a little bit more time, but I know we're running kind of tight. So I'm going to just make sure that I have my eye tracking turned on in my speech software. I do. So now with eye tracking, I should, if it's going to let me do this. All right, so I'm going to recalibrate. Okay, never mind. So running into a small technical issue there, but as you guys saw before with me highlighting in the gaze settings, the red circle, it's the same concept within the speech software. You would just be looking at whatever icon you wanted to select to navigate into or use that keyboard or that function within the speech software itself. If we get into doing things like computer control, this is going to be more advanced eye tracking, where if they wanted to step out of the speech software and actually go out and use the internet, for example, or pull up a spreadsheet. So if you can see there's kind of a circle on the screen. And whenever I stop over an object, I get presented with the opportunity to double click, left click, scroll, all of those different types of functions, just as we would have with a mouse and a keyboard. So I'm going to see if I can navigate out to a website here. So I'm going to look at Firefox. I'm going to tell it that I want to double click on Firefox. And since I'm connected to the internet, hopefully this will not give me an issue.
Guys, I'm going to add here too. Chris makes this look really easy. This is not as easy as it looks. You will, if you ever are in a position where you have to be part of this, you will need him there.
I agree, Eric. I'm watching him do this. That was the point I was going to make. Like, you really need to call people in when this happens, and you need to advocate. You just can't say, we're not going to use it today, because you're taking away their voice. So if you do go into a therapy session and they do have a device and it's not working, you know, you really need to advocate for them. So, and make sure that you get everybody involved, because this is way over my head for sure.
So this is a newer function that we have called computer control. And as you guys can see, I know I've just been kind of flying through here, but I've been trying to show you that I can use single click, I can use double click, I can pull up a keyboard here and start typing in that I want to go to. Let's see, I don't have word prediction for Google yet. And you can adjust how quickly it clicks and what your word prediction looks like. All right, so I had an extra G there for my Google. But I can now run out and now I'm on Google essentially, and I can navigate. I can click my scroll function, and now I can scroll down on that web page or scroll, as you saw me before, I was opening up a PDF document. I can scroll left to right to open up or read through documents. And just, again, it's all about control. It's all about giving people back that independence that they once had, or maybe they've never had the opportunity to use before. So that's a quick overview, a very quick overview of some of the eye tracking. I'm going to stop sharing on this screen. The last thing I want to show you guys is a little bit about the mounting, because that is really where most speech therapists, Eric can probably attest to this, most speech therapists struggle the most when it comes to mounting solutions, putting those pieces together. That's not something a lot of them feel very, very comfortable with. And I
I'll
feel
be
like,
honest, I just memorized the wheelchairs and the terms, and then I call you.
all right.
That's why it's so important when you're going through that wheelchair change about every 5 years, and we're going to get more into this, guys, on Thursday, that you make sure if your patient has a communication device, that mount will still work with the new chair, because the frames, if they change, some frames do not
Correct.
accommodate for that, especially if you start throwing tilt and space and things like that on it.
Yep. So what I'm showing here, this is just a picture from our website from one of our users down here in Florida. What he's using is an F3 permobile chair. And if you guys, I'm going to try and zoom in here. I'm not sure how badly this is going to pixelate. Scroll back down. Okay, that's not too bad. All right, so what we're actually looking for here, when you're looking at a wheelchair, whether it's a tilt and space chair, a power chair, a manual wheelchair, most of the time, what we would like to do is attach to the seating or the rail directly below that seat cushion. So for this particular chair, I can tell that there are 2 tracks right here. That's what I need pictures of. That's what I need to see and what I need to know whenever I'm looking at quoting out a piece for a chair. Because this track system is going to be very different than maybe another wheelchair manufacturer. Or if it's a manual chair, this is most likely going to be a round tube. And it's going to require a different piece to physically attach to that chair. To give you an idea of what those look like, this is an Excel document that we have internally, and it kind of shows us if this is a round wheelchair mount, what are some different options we have to physically attach to that chair. We could use something that wraps all the way around the chair if we have clearance, something that is like a 0 clearance side clamp, something that actually goes through these holes. That's a bolted clamp. So we have different solutions and different options depending on the type of chair. But if we don't have pictures and we don't understand what chair we're mounting to, the chances of us getting this correct are going to be pretty slim. There are different chair manufacturers. You can see up here, this was Ray Adapt or Connect It. That's probably the most popular one that we use right now. But there's also a company called Daisy that uses a similar layout. If we're looking at power wheelchairs, this is the example of a single channel track. So as we can see, this is more of an Invacare, a Quickie, or a Quantum chair where we only have one large track. And here's what each one of those frame clamps would look like from the different manufacturers and what the nut that would slide into that tracking would look like and how that kind of goes into the track. The Permobile chairs, as I said before, use that dual track system. So you're going to see that it's going to slide in both of those tracks. Not the greatest photos there, but essentially it's 2 different nuts that slide in to both tracks and allow us to secure tightly to that chair. And then when we build the wheelchair up itself, depending on the type of chair that we've chosen, you might have multiple tubes, right? Something that comes out from the side to give us some distance, something that comes up to give us the proper height, and then something that comes over in front of that patient. So you can kind of see they can be squared off, they can be angular, they might even be something that is a curved tube, like this one right here, where instead of having 3 tubes, we can use 2 tubes and allow a little more flexibility and a little bit more ease for the family. Ray Adapt's version, very similar. And what's nice about these particular mounts is you can't really see it all that well on these pictures, but there's a little black handle. See if they have it whenever you can click in. All right, so that gives me a little bit of a better picture. There's a little handle right here, a little lever. And these systems, the great thing about them is you can loosen this handle and the whole system lifts away. So whenever we're loading in and out of a van or in and out of a car, or we don't need the mounting system on, the family does not need tools to take apart and reassemble this system. They can simply flip the lever, lift the tubing up and away, store it in the back of the van, or set it off to the side, and when they're ready to use it again, they slide the tubing back in and close the lever to lock it in place, and then clip the device down onto the mounting system itself. There are a multitude of different mounting options for devices, including ones that don't mount to the chair. There are mounting systems for switches, single switches, dual switches. This is all the stuff that Eric related to earlier, saying that we need your help. We need to know about positioning. Where does that device need to be? Where do those switches need to be located? Are we using 1 or 2 switches? Is it at the hand, the foot, the head? How are we going to make this successful for that individual? And putting this stuff all together and making these adjustments is really going to probably fall more into your expertise level than it would the speech side of the equation. But it's going to be the whole team that works together to figure out individually or for that individual what's going to be our best solution.
Well, Chris, this makes me think of my patient who came in with the eye gaze and decided he wanted to switch to manual.
Yep.
Yeah, because I have a patient that was on eye gaze, and he didn't like the eye gaze. It was difficult for him, so he had some emerging motoric skills, and so he wanted to switch to direct selection. So his mount was no longer appropriate for his device. So that can happen. So that's why the communication is definitely necessary, and a team is definitely necessary.
Are there any questions that you guys have, or did I miss anything in the chat? It looks like Eric's been answering some things as we go. But do you guys have anything that you'd like to ask, or anything that I didn't clarify?
Chris, can Tobii Dynavox remote in? And if so, does the device have to be broken open for internet access for that?
So Tobii Dynavox, our tech support team, absolutely remotes into devices all the time. It does usually have to be an unlocked device. And what that means is medical insurance requires us to put a piece of software on the equipment, not allowing the family out to the internet whenever they get the device initially, because they do not consider that a medical need. They consider that a convenience item. So what technical support can do, though, is bypass that requirement, log on to the device, and help to either teach them what they need to know or fix the settings and get them back up and running if they do run into any issues. So our tech support is open Monday through Friday, 9 to 9 Eastern Standard Time, and they're all based out of the United States. So you're not going to get shipped overseas. You're going to get someone that works directly with patients every single day. Any other questions, guys?
So, am I on? Yeah.
Yep.
Just to kind of logistically, guys, I did send out another link for us to get back together and all that stuff. We're just going to call it a day. We're not going to go to that other link. So if you do have any questions, we're going to go ahead and ask them now, because when we sign out of this meeting, we're not going to go to that other Ring Central meeting, because we'll just take that presentation we had there and we'll move it to Thursday. So if you have any questions for Chris or Eric on what it is that they just presented to you, you can ask them now. We'll give you a second to think about it. Hearing none, that's great.
I just really appreciate all that you guys do. You guys are definitely a very valued member of the healthcare team. And I know for me, whether it's adults or kids, I could not function without you guys.
Well, thanks for having us in. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, let's give Eric and Chris some love. I really, really appreciate their time, taking it out of the day to come. And then, being able to do this remotely is very, very nice. And I appreciate you guys, being flexible with us.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Sure. All right, guys. Well, if that's it, I'm going to close down the meeting. And if you guys ever need anything in the future, please don't hesitate to reach out to us.
Stay safe and thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Have a nice day. We'll chat soon.